Good morning, children. Welcome to English class. Today we are going to learn Unit 3 Nativity. In this unit, we will come across a prose Gentleman of Rio and Medio written by Don Anselmo. Before going to the lesson, let us know something about the author. Gentleman of Rio and Medio is a lesson written by Don Anselmo. He worked as a lawyer and held public office. He wrote about Mexico and southwestern United States. The story is based on an actual legal case. Children, the hero of this lesson is Don Anselmo. He is one of the main character in this lesson. He was most respectful old man of the village. He had a small house and orchard. Orchard means a piece of land in which fruit trees are grown. He lived in his ancestral land. Ancestors means forefathers. He lived in that land. He tilled the land belonging to his ancestors. That means he was working in that land. His house was in an old fashion. The house in which Don Anselmo was living was old fashioned. A small narrow stream was flowing throughout his land. That means a small water body was found near his land. Lot of trees were grown in his orchard and it was very beautiful. The land was full of trees and the orchard was very beautiful. We can find a storyteller in this lesson. The storyteller was the mediator between Don Anselmo and American people. The American people wanted to buy Don Anselmo's property. Who wanted to buy Don Anselmo's property, children? The Americans wanted to buy. But Don Anselmo was not in a hurry to sell his property. But he was not in a hurry to sell the property. After much effort and negotiation of the storyteller, the old man agreed to sell his property. It took months of time. That means after much effort and official discussion, the old man agreed to sell his property. But it took a long time to sell the property. Children, after the explanation of each paragraph, you will be getting a question. You have to write the answers for that in your rough notes. Read the text properly and write the answers. Here comes your question. Where did Don Anselmo live? What work did he do? Don Anselmo wore an old green faded coat. His gloves were old and torn. His fingertips can be seen through them. The cane he carried was the skeleton of worn out umbrella. When he entered the room, he bowed to all and slowly removed his hat and gloves. The old man's action is similar to that of Charlie Chaplin's action. Children, here we will come to know about the appearance of Don Anselmo. He was wearing an old green faded coat and also the gloves which were old and torn. From that torn gloves, his fingertips could be seen. He was also carrying a cane in his hand. That cane was nothing but the skeleton of worn out umbrella. When Don Anselmo went to discuss about the property matter with the Americans, he greeted the people who were waiting there by bowing his head and removing his hat and gloves. The old man's this action was similar to that of Charlie Chaplin's action. His style reminded the style of Charlie Chaplin. Children, here comes the question for you. who did want to buy the land? What was the response of Don Anselmo? After the official discussion, the old man agreed to sell his property for $1,200 in cash. For how many dollars did Don Anselmo agree to sell his property? For $1,200. The buyer of the land got the land surveyed in order to make the deed. In order to make the agreement for the registration process, the buyer of the land, that is the Americans, wanted the land to be surveyed. After the survey, it was found that he owned 8 more acres, which was almost twice in size than in the deed. The surveyor said that Don Anselmo owned 8 more acres of land, which was double, which was almost twice the land in the deed. The Americans were good people and they offered to pay the double price they had quoted earlier. As the Americans were good people, they decided to pay the extra amount to the extra land. Children, here is your question. The storyteller offered the old man almost the double of the price he had quoted earlier. Why? When storyteller offered the old man almost the double of the price, the old man thought about storyteller's proposal for a while and he rejected that offer, telling that it was an insult to him. If any other person was in that place, they would have felt very happy and accepted that extra amount. But Don Anselmo was a man of principles. He did not want to take that extra amount. Don Anselmo told the storyteller and the Americans that he would take the price what he had agreed earlier. The storyteller argued, but the old man was not ready to accept more money. Finally, he signed the deed and took the money which he had agreed earlier. Now comes the question. What was the reaction of the old man to the storyteller's offer? Or Don Anselmo was a man of principles? Explain. A month later, the Americans renovated the house and orchard. They started to live in the house. After 1 month, the Americans replastered that old house, cut off some branches of the trees and packed the fence, put the fence and started to live in that house. But Americans complained that the children of the village were running all over their property. They came and played every day under the tree and plucked the flowers. When the Americans started to live in the house, the children of that village started disturbing them. They were running all over their property and played every day under the tree and plucked the flowers. This was irritating the Americans. When they were spoken to, they only laughed and talked back in Spanish. This was the complaint of the Americans. Children, the next question for you. What did the Americans' family complain about? To solve this problem, the storyteller, who was the mediator between Don Anselmo and the Americans, sent a messenger to call Don Anselmo. When the old man came for discussion, storyteller told that children of the village overran the orchard every day. Children spent most of their time in the orchard. He requested the old man to stop the children from doing this. When the old man came for discussion, storyteller will tell about the problem created by the children and he will tell the old man to stop the children from doing this. But Don Anselmo will tell that he had sold only the property to the Americans because they were good people. He did not sell the trees, and the trees belonged to the children of the village. What he will tell? He sold only his property but not the trees, and the trees belonged to the children of that village. Here comes the next question. What did the storyteller request Don Anselmo to do after the complaint? What did Don Anselmo reply? When Don Anselmo tells like that, the storyteller tried to convince Don Anselmo. The land is sold, the possession of trees in that place is also to buyers. The storyteller will convince Don Anselmo telling that once the land is sold, the owner of the tree is also the buyer only. Like this, he will try to convince Don Anselmo. The old man accepted the matter and continued that he is the oldest man in the village. Everyone in the village were his relatives. Every time a child has been born in Rio and Medio, he had planted a tree for that child. So he had no right to sell and he didn't sell it. At last, the old man accepted the matter. He tried to understand what the storyteller was telling, and he told them that he was the oldest man in the village and everyone in that village were his relatives. Every time when a child was born in Rio and Medio, he used to plant trees for that child, so he had no right to sell them. Children, here comes your question. Why was the storyteller unable to convince the old man? The old man was so generous and he refused to make more money from the Americans. The old man did not want to make money from the Americans. He was so generous and also he was a man of principles. When Don Anselmo told that he had no right to sell the trees, the Americans decided to buy all the trees individually from the relatives of Don Anselmo. Instead of going legally and solving this problem, the Americans, who were the good people, decided to buy the trees individually. They showed the respect to the old man's words and they respected the feelings of the old man. They tried to understand that emotions and purchased trees individually from the relatives of Don Anselmo. Though it took much time to buy the trees individually, the problem was solved at last and the Americans were leading a peaceful life in that orchard. This is all about the lesson, The Gentleman of Rio and Medio. Here comes your question. How did the Americans solve the problem? Children, you have to write all the answers in your rough notes. I hope this class was beneficial for you. Meet you all in the next class. Thank you.